Hey everybody! Happy Tuesday evening and welcome to my live chat about Sasquatch. Thank you guys so much for joining. I see there's already some people in the chat, so hello to you and thank you for joining. I would love to first find out from those of you that have been here and are joining in what your thoughts are on Sasquatch, whether or not you believe that he exists, and let's just start a conversation. I'm making this video tonight because the state of Oklahoma actually just announced that they were going to try and pass a Sasquatch hunting season in the state of Oklahoma. So I thought that was really interesting because it is a mythical creature to a lot of people, and to a lot of people, they believe in it. So I wanted to hear from you guys what you thought about it. And I also reached out to, the audience here on Instagram and Twitter to find out if anyone wanted to share any stories. So I'm excited to see if anyone replied to that as well. But we'll chat about all of that and more tonight. And I have some other weird tales and things like that I wanted to talk about as far as stuff in the woods is concerned. But I'm just going to, talk to you guys in the chat and then we'll talk about it in the video. Hi, Mike. Yes. Oh, yeah. And so Mike Leon, he actually just joined. He sent a great website. It's the Bigfoot Conservancy, actually. And I actually didn't know they existed. So that was really cool to read about kind of some of the findings that they've had over the last couple of decades. And I'm going to answer your question on what I would do if I saw Bigfoot in just a second. But I wanted to go over some of the stuff that I was reading about today. So if you guys haven't really been interested that much in Bigfoot, well, he goes by a lot of different names, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the wood ape. As Mike pointed out, it's the Wood Ape Conservancy that they have over in Oklahoma. And they gather all kinds of data from all over the country. There's actually been Sasquatch sightings in almost every state. The only one where there hasn't been one is actually in Hawaii. And Weed Hop, nice to see you in the chat. Hi, I'm glad you made it. I did this a little bit later tonight, so I was hoping more people could hop in. And I know I haven't done a live this year yet in 2021, so I'm excited to be back on the air live with you guys and chit-chatting about just kind of a fun topic, and wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on it too. So let me know in the chat right now, if you are watching right now, if you believe in Sasquatch or not, and if you've ever seen or heard Sasquatch in the woods as well. So would definitely like to know what your guys' thoughts are on that. So me personally, have I seen Sasquatch? No. Would I like to? I'm not sure, but we're going to get into that because I do have some theories from a bunch of different people that I'm kind of into that we're going to talk about in just a second. Matt Black says, methinks that Bigfoot rules. Awesome. And how am I going to find Bigfoot in my living room? Well, guys, I'm not going to find Bigfoot in my living room, but I did want to chat about some of the places Bigfoot has been seen, because there are a lot of places, specifically in the Pacific Northwest. And I'm planning on actually in this summer, going to the Pacific Northwest and spending a bunch of time. And Oregon actually has the most sightings of Sasquatch out of any place in the country, which is pretty cool. Okay. So MPL 2288 says, yes, seen and heard and knows they exist. I would love it. I know it's a chat, so if it's a long story, I get it, but would love to hear more about that. And any details that you have. Andrew Muller says, I believe in Harry and the Hendersons. I mean, if Sasquatch was that nice, I would love to meet Sasquatch, but I'm not really sure. Whitetail, New York is the birthplace of Bigfoot. Oh, that's good to know. So I grew up in New Hampshire, which I think some of you guys know, some of you guys maybe don't know. But, I spent a lot of time in the woods growing up, and I definitely never saw anything that resembled a Bigfoot. But I feel like they're also really elusive. So I maybe just wasn't in the right place at the right time. And we've got a story here evolving in the chat. But I'll let you continue it and I can share it all when you're done typing here. But one of the chatters here was in the Marines patrolling a village in North Afghanistan. And that reminds me that, all around the world, people have spotted Sasquatches or Bigfoots. And in other places, like in Iran, they actually call it the Leti. In the Himalayas, they actually call it the Yeti. In Florida, they have like the swamp creatures. So it's interesting that there's been sightings of some sort of Bigfoot-like creature in basically every country. So that makes me think that they do exist. But on the other hand, how can they exist if we've never found a body? We've never found like carcasses that look like they've been eaten by a Bigfoot. So definitely like a lot of holes in the theory, but also lots of things to make you believe that it does exist. So I want to go back to this Oklahoma law that would allow a Bigfoot hunting season, because it's just a really interesting way, I think, to drive tourism. And I want to know, I've been to Oklahoma a few times, but it's probably not a place that I would necessarily go back to tourism wise. So will this bring any of you guys in the chat to Oklahoma if they have this Bigfoot hunting season? Would love to know that. And Krieger versus Big Brother just said in Florida they call it the skunk ape. And the woods in BC, Washington, California, and Arkansas is a place that Paul Weiss have been, and he doesn't believe in them, but would have loved to see them. So definitely people on both sides of the fence here. We've got believers and non-believers. As I was saying, the historical accounts for Sasquatch have been in almost every country. And actually Native Americans and the First Nations in the United States actually had accounts of some sort of ape-like creature as well. So there's a lot of history here. But yeah, and as Weed Hop pointed out, this Oklahoma hunting season is catch and release only. So you cannot actually kill Sasquatch, which when I first read the headlines, I was like, oh yeah, let's kill this mythical endangered species. That's terrible. But yes, it's only catch and release. So even if somebody does happen to spot Sasquatch or Bigfoot, they can't shoot it. They can only potentially try to trap it. And then if anyone does, they actually get $25,000 or upwards of $25,000, I guess. So I think it's a good way to promote tourism in Oklahoma. And I don't know, this might make me go to Oklahoma and get myself a permit to see if I can find Sasquatch. Ape Man says it's going to take a lot more than that to get him to go to Oklahoma. Yeah, I think I'd rather go look for Sasquatch in the Pacific Northwest, if you ask me. But I don't know. We'll see if I end up driving through Oklahoma. There's a high possibility of going there. And MPL 2288, guys can't read today, says in China, it's called the Yeren, I think is what he's trying to say. So that's interesting. Yeah. So just sightings all over the world, which I find so fascinating. And, I spend a lot of time in the woods, but I've never seen a Sasquatch. And I would love to see like a Sasquatch footprint as well. The really interesting thing on this this website, the Conservancy for Sasquatch, shows you all these different footprints. And the crazy thing is that they're all so similar in size that it seems like, how can you fake that? I don't know. It's pretty crazy. So I want to throw a theory. And yes, PNW, I am coming there hopefully at the beginning of this summer. Park and Teller County in Colorado has the most sightings according to MD. Okay, interesting. I was just reading that Oregon per capita has the most sightings per state, but I spent a lot of time in Colorado. However, I haven't done a ton of like backcountry camping in Colorado, just backcountry hiking. So I think I need to spend some more time in the woods, and maybe with some sort of, sound amplifier. I know that the Sasquatch shriek is supposed to be pretty frightening. So if any of you guys in the chat have heard that while you're in the woods, definitely let me know. Okay, so we have more of this story from one of the listeners here. Patrolling in North Afghanistan, and part of the mission was to go to villages and see if they need anything. Usually the tribal leaders will ask for food, medicine, infrastructure, etc. Okay, story to be continued. Sean, hi to you. Thank you so much for joining. We're just talking about Bigfoot in here, so if you've got any Bigfoot stories that you want to throw into the mix here, or places that we should go if we want to try and find Bigfoot, please let us know in the chat. So in Washington and Oregon, obviously we've been talking about, there's a lot of Sasquatch sightings. I think that's kind of been the most televised area, although now I know a lot of the Sasquatch shows are up in Minnesota and Michigan. But in Oregon, they used to actually have in the 70s a Bigfoot trapping license, like they're trying to propose it in Oklahoma. But you can't obviously shoot it. You can only try and capture it. So, and then also in the 1970s, they had basically a trap set up in this national forest, and it was there for 6 years because a lot of people had sighted Bigfoot in this area, but the only thing they ever caught was a beaver. So my theory is that Sasquatch is a interdimensional being, and the reason we'll never find a Sasquatch is because they spend most of their time in this other dimension, and they end up coming in and out of our dimension, I think sometimes to probably get food, to walk around, and to maybe even sometimes take people, which I think could explain some of the missing 411 of people that go missing in national parks. But so let me know what you guys think about that theory. And I actually read a book called Out on Foot. It was about a border patrol agent and all of the weird paranormal stuff that happened to him kind of on the border of Arizona and, Southern California. And this was something that he believed because he'd actually had multiple sightings, but he'd also had a lot of paranormal experiences. So this is something I can definitely get behind, but let me know what you guys think. And we've got a little bit more of this story here. So I will start from the top here. I was patrolling North Afghanistan, and part of our mission was to go to villages and see if they needed anything. Usually tribal leaders asked for food, medicine. And this village was so remote, we couldn't access except through a helicopter. So he asked the tribal leader what his village needs or what kind of trouble they had had. And the village elders told him that there's a group of men that live north of them in another mountain, and they've been kidnapping their kids and livestock. It's a normal tactic by the Taliban to kidnap kids. Okay, well, tell us more. Does this have to do with Sasquatch, would be my question, or some sort of Yeti or Bigfoot? All right, I'm just reading here, guys. Okay, so some of you are saying you can get behind the interdimensional. According to Native American folklore, they protect the forest and show up when things are environmentally bad. Okay, well, I can definitely get behind that. I mean, there's a lot of bad environmental stuff which maybe explains why so many Sasquatch have been sighted in Pennsylvania, because there's been a lot of stuff in the last 50 years that have happened in Pennsylvania that have been really bad for the environment. So maybe that's why there's been so many sightings there. Ape Man says he's seen a UFO while backpacking. Maybe it was a Bigfoot transport ship. That is another theory. Okay, so another theory is that Bigfoot are some sort of intergalactic species that have come to Earth. I think they would still need to be interdimensional because it doesn't make sense that they live on the same plane as us. Otherwise, we would see a lot more evidence of them existing, especially if they've existed for hundreds or thousands of years. But I don't know. Can't the SCP help capture Bigfoot? I don't know. Okay, so MPL says that he believes that they're reclusive and not very many of them. They're mostly nocturnal, and there's so much room for them to hide from people because they're in these really remote areas of forest. I also believe that, but I think that we would have seen something other than just footprints and maybe like a little bit of hair here and there. Also, someone believes they might bear the mark of Cain, and that's why they are the way they are. And then, okay, so continuing with this story about Afghanistan. According to his story, the Taliban wore black sometimes. And so he asked them for more details. And they said that they're very hairy. And then I asked if they were wearing civilian clothing, to which he replied, okay, I'm a cliffhanger here, guys. I'm waiting for the story to end here. Okay, he said, no, they're black skin, not black clothes. So I was thinking either a group of... Okay, so maybe a group of NBA players. All right, I'm going to let you finish that story and then share it whether or not it's appropriate. I'm going to continue with this interdimensional theory because Dorian here is like, how would that work? You know, I think if this is all... So there's this whole other community, I guess, of scientists that talk about quantum theories and the different the different interdimensions, the different dimensions that exist on Earth. And if we talk about paranormal stuff, which I think when we talk about Sasquatch, we're kind of getting into paranormal stuff too, we definitely have to open our mind to the idea that, you know, paranormal stuff exists and that maybe Sasquatch is also sharing one of those planes where paranormal things exist also, and they sometimes cross into our dimension. So it's kind of a lot to think about. But I think if I am going to believe in Bigfoot, that's the thing that I am, you know, most likely to believe as far as the whole story makes sense to me. And I'm just reading here, guys. Sorry. So anyways, the long story short with this Afghanistan story is that these creatures that were apparently kidnapping kids had black skin and hair everywhere on their body. So that sounds like another version of a Sasquatch to me. And one of the other things that I know in some of my videos, I get a lot of comments about missing 411 because I am always by myself for the most part and in the backcountry, out in the woods. And people are always like, oh my gosh, you're going to be one of the missing 411s. But I really believe, from watching and reading so many tales of these people that go missing in national parks, and a lot of the time they're with people when they go missing. It's like two people are hiking together and they're like, hey, George. And then, you know, 2 minutes later they turn back around and the person is gone. And so it's just like, it doesn't make any sense. Where did they go? And then they can't find them anywhere. It's like they literally disappeared. And the only explanation to me is if they went to another dimension. And sometimes they've found like remnants of clothing in these places. But like yards, like hundreds of yards, sometimes miles away from where the person originally disappeared. So it only makes sense to me that Bigfoot came onto the plane, grabbed the person, went back to the other dimension, and then took them to a cave somewhere, and then that's why we're never going to find them again. So, I don't know. Okay, MD says, I never hear people ever mentioning stumbling in bear or mountain lion remains. But new species are still being discovered. So yeah, I mean, this is the both sides of the fence, right? We've got, stuff in the forest decays really quickly. But even bears and mountain lions, you will find their skulls. Like even when I was hiking in Colorado this summer, you know, I found like a deer skull. I found other bones from animals. And when I was in Wyoming this, you know, a couple weeks ago, I found the skull of an elk. So you do find the remains of other animals. And if Sasquatch existed on our plane or at all, I think we would at some point find some of their remains, unless they're being all somehow taken out of the forest by other Sasquatch. Let's see. MD says they have piggyback cameras that I think that could be really useful if they left them out for an entire season. Yeah. So this is the other thing, because even in Yellowstone National Park, so like the wolverine is one of the most endangered species in this country. It just got protected, which is a story, but a trap camera in Yellowstone caught a wolverine for the first time in like 30 years on the trap camera. It's the first time anyone's really seen a wolverine in Yellowstone. But even that critter that is like super elusive has been now spotted on a trap camera. And some of the most elusive big cats and things like that are spotted on trap cameras. So I also think that, you know, I think at some point they would be spotted on some sort of trap camera. We have them all over the national forests that the Park Service puts up. So I find it interesting that if they exist, that we've never seen them. And I was looking at a bunch of photos today and video footage of some of the best sightings. And some of them you're like, okay, that's weird. That makes me wonder, and that doesn't look like an animal. But some of them are like, okay, that looks like a silhouette of a guy with a backpack, or some weird guy that lives in the woods. So I don't know. Let's see. MD said people claim that they follow the elk herds around Pikes Peak area and eat them. Ooh, well, interesting. There are definitely a lot of elk in Colorado. There are definitely a lot of like deer and elk in Washington and Oregon. So there's definitely like a lot of things for them to eat if they were living in these areas. Even Pennsylvania has a ton of deer. I mean, most of the lower 48 states, which there's been a sighting in every state, has plenty of stuff for a Sasquatch to eat, I think, if it did live in the deep woods. There's even been spottings in like Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama. So, and those are places I feel like have probably less to eat. And there's more, you know, alligators and other big animals that I think would be hard to compete with. Yeah, and okay, some of the 411 stories are really a mystery. They so are a mystery. And I think some of the missing hikers are sad people that commit suicide, jump off a cliff or something like that, according to North Texas hiker. Yeah, I agree with you a little bit, but the problem with that theory is that a lot of these people, like some of them are solved, but there's so many unsolved mysteries where they never find a body, they never find any clues. It's like the person just like, poof, they vanished. So it's interesting. And I don't know what happened to them. I don't have an answer for that either. But I have another side topic that I want to talk about in a second that could explain some of these missing people as well. But I'm going to read some more of the chat here. You guys are like, I love that you guys are so active in the chat. I love that you guys love this topic as much of me. And I'm going to go back to this other guy's story really quick. He basically said that, end of story, there's a group of Bigfoot in northern Afghanistan near the city of Mazar-e-Sharif. So, yes, they're all around the world, which makes it kind of hard to believe that they don't exist. I mean, there was another scientific theory that Bigfoot could be like the remains of a small population of like Neanderthals. But like, I also definitely think we would have run into them, you know, more often if that were true. So I'm not sure I can get behind that. But yeah, as one of you just said, have an open mind. Some say they are relatives to the once Gigantopithecus, who once roamed the earth as early as 100,000 years ago. And this was the largest like ape species that we had that would have been bigger than a chimpanzee and a gorilla, the same size as we know Sasquatch is. So that's another theory as well, that they are, you know, the remains of this really small group of animal that existed about 100,000 years ago. I don't buy it, guys. So we'll see. Best sightings, yeah, as MD says, are still super sketchy. But Pikes Peak, where she was just talking about, is a really high traffic area. I've been there to Pikes Peak. It's a beautiful place, but yeah, around there you have like Colorado Springs. There's a lot of houses. There's a lot of tourists. There's a lot of people in and out of that area. So there's not a lot of places to hide, and it's a little bit more desert-y over there and rocky, less forest. So I agree with you. It would be a difficult place, I think, for a Sasquatch to hide. Mark Cummings says, he comes to my backyard once a week. Well, you better get a camera out there and start taking pictures of it, Mark. I don't know. Yeah, we've also got, bears don't bury their dead. If the Bigfoot species is intelligent, they might bury their dead or at worst cannibalize them. Okay, that's a theory. I could believe that. I don't know what would happen to the bones, but I guess it's easy enough to bury stuff. It's not like people are out digging up, in the middle of the forest. So that's true. According to Bigfoot, Smallfoot exists. I don't know the answer to that. Is that true? I'm not sure. Does anyone know the answer to that? I think Smallfoot would be us, right? Joe says, glad you're bringing this topic up. Yes, you're welcome. I don't talk about it a lot in my hiking videos, but I am I'm super into paranormal and like weird stuff, aliens, ghosts, all that kind of stuff. When I was little, I just would like eat up any book on ghost sightings and paranormal stuff. So it's a topic that I don't talk about very often, but I'm so glad that so many of you guys are interested in this kind of stuff, because I do want to start talking about it more and trying to kind of put it into some of my videos as well when I'm out in the field. And definitely when I come to the Pac Northwest in a couple of months, I will be exploring this topic more, and we can have some more conversations about it, while we're out in the woods and stuff like that, which I think will be really fun. Okay. And MD says that the Gigantopithecus, which was that, ancient animal that was about the same size as Bigfoot, grew to be 10 feet and about 2,000 pounds. And it actually had a diet of bamboo. So it was mostly a vegetarian, like a giant panda. So yeah, I mean, bears and big animals can definitely get the same, just as large by eating vegetables. I mean, all the animals we eat vegetables. So that doesn't matter. I mean, I guess, yeah, they wouldn't have to eat deer or coyotes or rabbits or anything like that. They could be mainly vegetarians, which is a good theory as well. I can get behind that. Pred's Head said, I heard a loud tree knock at 4 a.m. on the Appalachian Trail near Solar Bulge Shelter in North Carolina, hundreds of yards into the forest and miles from any town. Well, I would love to know how you felt after that. I actually, while I was kind of researching stuff for this video, I did read that, I don't know where it was, but I guess someone's tent in the middle of the night was like pelted by rocks. Like someone throwing rocks at it or something throwing rocks at it. And I don't know about you guys, but like if I was alone and that happened, I mean, I don't even know what I would do. I would be terrified. And I would probably just like hide in my sleeping bag or something. I don't even know what I would do. But what would you guys do? I mean, if you were out in the woods alone, camping, and something started like throwing stuff at your tent, I mean, would you think it was a person, or would you go the other way and assume that it's something paranormal or something like Bigfoot? So let me know in the comments. Cause I don't know what I would do. I would die. That's like my biggest fear when I'm camping by myself, or out in the woods and it starts to get dark. Is not really weird people, although weird people is on the list too, but it's more like the paranormal, what's out there that I don't know about and I can't see. So there's, according to somebody in the chat here, your screen name is ... so it's hard for me to say by your name, but there's a lot of UFO sightings that have occurred within the same time span of Bigfoot sightings. I was actually reading about this. And so there's these orbs, I guess. This is another theory. There's orbs that appear in the sky or in the air, whatever, when Bigfoot sightings happen. So it's almost like one of the other theories is that they're transported via these orbs from either space or another dimension, and the orb helps them transport into our dimension. So a lot of the times when you see Bigfoot, you also see these orbs appearing before or after the sighting happens. So that is another theory that I was reading about as well a little bit earlier. So I think the interdimension thing, guys, I think that's got to be, I think there's some gusto there. Telluride, Colorado, and further south, West Corners get some mysterious sightings a lot as well. Well, I actually spend a lot of time in that area. I'm going to have to, I think, spend some more time in the woods out there after hours, because as one of you guys said, they probably are a bit more nocturnal. I don't think I'm going to see them like hiking a mountain, and I don't think you're going to see them probably on a hiking trail either, which is obviously where I spend most of my time. So I think I need to get a little bit deeper into the woods as well. Let's see what else you guys are saying here. Read Dr. Meldrum's book, Sasquatch Legend Meet Science. Okay, awesome. I'm going to check that out. I'm going to write that down right now. I have a little pad of paper here, guys, in case you guys like gave me some great suggestions here, so that I wouldn't forget. Sasquatch Meets Science. Yeah, and if any of you guys haven't read Out on Foot, I would definitely recommend that book. It's so interesting. Not only do you learn a lot about like the actual happenings of the Border Patrol, but you learn about all these different paranormal, Bigfoot, other things, and it was really interesting. So I highly recommend that book as well. Let's see. Have I been to Scotland to check about the Loch Ness Monster? I haven't been to Scotland yet, guys, but I would definitely like to dive in the, Lake Loch Ness, and check out the Loch Ness Monster area. For Washington State, heard the Middle Fork River near North Bend had some hikers reporting sightings. Yeah, so I was reading earlier that Washington State has like 9 sightings per 100,000 people or something like that. So there's definitely a ton of sightings that happen in Washington. But as you guys know, Washington State has like some really, really thick forests. You've got Mount Rainier there. You've got, Rainier National Park. You've got the Olympic National Forest. So there's a ton of just not very heavily trafficked and cut off from civilization and cities, area where I think a big animal could definitely live as well. And I took a ghost tour in Savannah. Well, you know what, guys? I used to live in Savannah. I've taken the ghost tour there as well. And there's a lot of old Civil War tales and turn of the century tales from Savannah. A lot of good ghost stories there. Also, New Orleans has some great ghost stories if you guys want places to go on ghost tours. But yeah, I agree, John. Let's find the squash. the squatch. You also said you can sense them before you can see them. Things get real quiet. It feels like someone is watching you. The loud tree knocks, sometimes tossing stones in your direction, or even owl hoot sounds. Well, I will say there's been plenty of times when I've been out on a hike alone, and I have definitely had like the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And I have definitely had times where I have turned around and looked behind me and been like, my God, is anyone back there? And then it's like, I think I'll walk a little faster. Especially out here on the East Coast, because it is a lot more forested. In California, it's a lot rockier. There's a lot fewer trees, at least down in Southern California. So, other than tall bushes, there's really not a lot of places for any animal to hide, even mountain lions or anything like that. But yeah, over on this side of the country, that's a different story. And definitely in the Pacific Northwest, you can be in super, super thick forests. You're not going to come across a field or a pasture or anything like that for a long time. So definitely a lot of places for all kinds of different critters to hide. Another book recommendation, Contact from the Pleiades, SP. Okay, cool. David said portals he does believe exist. Okay, and I'm going to read the rest of the chat in a second. But so talking about portals. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk about tonight were actually these like stairs that lead to nowhere. I don't know if you guys have heard about any of these, but apparently in a couple of places around the world, there's like these stairs that appear in the woods in the middle of nowhere. They're not like from an old structure or anything like that. And they appear to lead to nothing. Now, some of the reports have actually shown that these stairs reappear and disappear like every couple of days. Some of these reports have said there's actually a set supposedly in the Rainier National Forest in Washington State. I read a report of a woman that actually worked for the Park Service. She said that she saw the stairs and she was with another person from the Park Service. And he said, if you go up there, you will go. It's like it takes you to like hell or like some other horrible dimension and you will never come back. And any of the reports of people that have gone up the stairs, they have either like had something terrible happen to them afterwards, or they've just never been the same afterwards. So I don't know what's up with these stairs in the woods, but that's something that I'm also like very interested in. But I definitely think they do take you to some sort of portal to another dimension, and maybe those stairs are for Sasquatch. I don't know. Let's see. MD says, study in Washington looked at 5 parameters: human population density, quiet, altitude, availability of water and tree canopy. 70% of planes that crash in Washington are never found. Oh my gosh, is that true? I'm going to have to look that up. That's crazy. You know, even here in, I don't know if you guys watched that video I did of hiking in Chia State Park in Alabama, but there's a ton of plane crashes in that forest. There's been like 12 plane crashes in this one little area over the last 30 years. And I was honestly thinking about camping there, but then I just kind of got the heebie-jeebies because I was like, oh great, like a bunch of plane crashes. That means like a lot of people have died in these woods. Definitely not where I want to camp by myself. But that's really interesting about all the plane crashes that haven't been found. I mean, I guess it is really densely wooded, but you'd think that people would still come upon these, you know, crash sites at some point. Have I ever considered visiting Skinwalker Ranch? It's either in Wyoming or Utah, but it had many different sightings and interdimensional possibilities. I've heard of Skinwalker Ranch. I don't remember B Earth where that is, but definitely I'm going to write that down on my little list here as a possibility, a place to go. And then Joe also said loud booming screams from miles away also have been reported. And then, oh yes, another thing that you might find if you see Sasquatch is you might smell a really foul odor. That seems to be something that's pretty common for people that have said they've seen Sasquatch. Like a cross between, oh, this sounds great, dead bodies and fish foul odors. Oh, great. Well, they obviously don't bathe very much. Rocket Raccoon just asked if I know anything about the Himalayan Bigfoot. So I was reading a little bit about the Yeti as well, which would be the Himalayan Bigfoot. There's definitely been a lot of reportings and a lot of sightings over the last 100 years or so. And honestly, like even the first Sasquatch to be kind of like actually put on paper was like in the early 1800s, and it was a guy, actually a British explorer. His name was David Thompson. He was credited with the first discovery really of Sasquatch footprints, which was in 1811. Obviously since then there's been a ton of sightings and things like that, but yes, the Yeti also is another creature that is very similar to Sasquatch but is all white and potentially lives in the Himalayas and throughout Nepal. I mean, it's interesting that they exist everywhere, all around the world. So I don't know, guys, I think they're out there. But that's about all I know about the Himalayan, you know, the Yeti, is that I just know that there's been a lot of sightings. Iran and Iraq and Afghanistan, as we know, have their own. So I think they have to exist. Have I listened to the Sierra Sound records? I actually have listened to those. And yeah, so if you guys listen to these, look them up. The sound of Sasquatch is quite terrifying. It's like, you know, like a blood-curdling scream. But then there's also been a lot of recordings that sound more like a wolf or a bear or a coyote or something like that, with howling and things like that. So it's hard to differentiate if it is a different creature or maybe just a pack of, you know, other critters that we know do exist. Yeah, and there's obviously the theory, as MD points out, that it might just be a bunch of guys in ghillie suits or gorilla suits. A lot of the photos and videos that have been known and been put out have obviously had, you know, notable things that you could be like, okay, there's a seam in that outfit, or, you know, there's things that you can always argue that make you think that it's not real. So I don't know. It was Skinwalker Ranch is in Utah. So I'm going to write that down and put that on my list. And oh, so there's a YouTube series also called The Clearinghouse. Okay, I'm not sure, but Dean just put it in the chat if you want to check that out. Yeah, so there's definitely some YouTube channels dedicated to Sasquatch. Also, I mean, we see, you know, on Travel Channel and stuff like that, also all these shows dedicated to hunting for Bigfoot, and they've never found him. So obviously these crews that are going out into the forest are just way too loud. But John also said on the Navajo Nation, they have a Bigfoot there known as the Howler. It's said to be a shapeshifter. Yeah, so I think, you know, even that, like the shapeshifter theory, I think that plays into this interdimensional theory, because if they are able to be one thing and then disappear. So one of the big encounters in this book, Out on Foot, which was written by this Border Patrol guy, was that he was chasing some illegal people that had come across the border. And they had been chased into like a river, and there was basically like a bunch of coyotes there, and the coyotes got scared by another animal that had been running through the area as well. And so he thought the whole time he was chasing an immigrant, when in reality he was chasing not an immigrant, something else that basically then crossed the river and then just disappeared. And the coyotes were scared. You know, he said it was like such a surreal experience, because even the predators of that area were terrified of whatever just came through there. And he said it was absolutely not a person. So I think that, you know, the shapeshifter or the interdimensional thing is a pretty strong theory on, you know, how Bigfoot lives in the world, I guess. Randy Man says it's much more fun to believe in Bigfoot. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some research on the Howler as well, guys. And yeah, MD points out, if as a human, and if you wanted to disappear, where would you go? I mean, I think most people do go deep in the woods. There's plenty of people, especially, you know, in this part of the country, West Virginia, Tennessee, that like go and live just like in the middle of the woods, like they did in Appalachia like 100 years ago. So there's definitely a lot of people that do that. But I don't know. I don't know that they're bringing gorilla suits, the people that are going and living out in the woods. But yeah, as you guys are pointing out, most of the videos on Bigfoot on YouTube are totally phony. I know, I watched one the other day. This guy that like does hiking videos, and one day he was like, I saw Bigfoot, but he like made up the whole thing. And I like really was like waiting for like something good to happen. Rocky Elmer, oh my gosh, is your friend's uncle. That's really cool. Yeah, so Rocky Elmer is the guy that wrote this book, Out on Foot. I would honestly love to meet him, because I just ate that book up, and I honestly have given it to like 5 different friends to read because I loved it so much. So that's really cool that he's your friend's uncle. I love that. Winneman says, I don't believe in Bigfoot, but I 100% believe in skinwalkers. Yeah, so skinwalkers are a Native American belief. I won't get too into that, but it's a paranormal entity, I should say, that Native Americans believe in. And I probably do believe in those, but I don't know that I want to admit that to myself because it will probably make me more scared when I'm out in the woods. Paul says his 2 sons have dressed up in Bigfoot outfits and run around Mammoth Lake, scaring hikers and campers. Oh my God. Well, that's hilarious. And next time they should wear some sort of GoPro or something like that so that we can watch that, because I would love to see that. MG also says the book Sasquatch Meets Science talks about posture and how the Bigfoot walks. Yeah, okay, so this like the most famous Bigfoot photo was this one that I think was in like 1970. I have it written down, but I don't want to stare at my notes too much here. But yeah, that was like the first one that showed this like Bigfoot posture, how they walked and how their gait was and stuff like that. And now that's what all these fake Bigfoot sightings have been kind of like based on, is that original photo where you see how he's standing and how his posture is and like how his gait is. So that was the first really famous photo. Would I ever shoot a Bigfoot? Absolutely not. I wouldn't shoot a Bigfoot. I mean, they're endangered species. I mean, I guess if it was trying to kill me, I would shoot it. But I don't know what I would shoot it with because I don't carry a gun into the woods. MPL says the native people of the PNW and the United States and Canada have legends and stories that go back hundreds of years. And the theory is they crossed over the Bering Strait, the land bridge, the same way people emigrated. Yeah, I did read that also. So yeah, this other theory is that Bigfoot came over from Europe or Asia across the Bering Sea land bridge, as well as with all of the people that emigrated to, you know, North America and Canada that became the First Nations here in this country. And it makes sense that that might have happened because as the First Nations have in their history, you know, this creature has existed for the length of time they've existed in you know, the United States and Canada as well. So I would not be surprised if that were true. And yes, if I were going to shoot Sasquatch, I would do it with my camera. And then yes, I would definitely tell it some bad dad jokes as well to calm him down if he was a little bit angry or hangry, maybe even. Well, guys, this has been such a fun chat. We've been going here for quite a while, so I'm going to end the night here, but I really enjoyed all of you guys joining me tonight and chatting with me about the existence of Sasquatch, whether or not he does exist or not. And I really enjoyed, you know, all of the things that you guys shared. I actually forgot to look and see if anyone shared their stories on Instagram. But not any in there, so no worries on that. And yeah, as MD says, if we could, so I'm going to just pitch this for any of you guys that live out in wooded areas, get a game camera, set it up in your woods, or set it up like maybe a mile into the woods, but somewhere that you know you can find it again. And let's see if we can see Bigfoot, if we can get him on camera. I might start doing this too. And yeah, let's pool our resources because I really enjoyed this chat and I definitely want to explore this topic more while I'm out hiking and exploring. And as I said, I'll be in the Pac Northwest, hopefully at the beginning of this summer. And I'll be doing some more in-depth chats and stuff like that on this topic while I am out traveling. So thank you guys again for joining. And thank you guys. I know this is kind of late for some of you, so have a great night. Don't forget, if you're new or you want more of this content, hit subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with a friend. And I will see you guys soon. As you guys know, new video every Sunday, and I'll hopefully be doing live chats every Tuesday as well. So have a great night, everybody.